If you're not here very often or you're here for the first time, particular welcome to you. It's lovely to have you with us. And I believe the Lord's got a message for this church today, a strong message for the church, but also a message for a lot of individuals here. This morning, it's a slightly unusual message, but it's certainly for me, so I hope it's for you too. But may the Lord bless it to you, may the Lord speak to you with the words that I speak, with the words that he speaks, and through the Holy Spirit to your spirit. Here we are in Mark. We've made it to Mark 6, and in a moment Emma and Liv are going to come and read to us, but I'm going to give you, maybe just Emma, but before we do that, I want to give you a quick run-in and context to what's about to happen. So previously, the three things that have just happened before we get to the passage we're going to study today are the following. In Mark 4, 35 to 41, Jesus calms a storm. Famous passage where he goes out, they're terrified, the boat's sinking, and Jesus is asleep at the bottom of the boat, and they go, give him a shake, and they're astonished that Jesus, just with his command, can calm a storm. Then what happens is what we looked at, was it last week? We looked at 3 healings. It was last week. We looked at 3 healings. We looked at a Gentile who was possessed by demons, a legion of demons. We looked at a woman with persistent bleeding who reached out and touched his garment and was instantly healed. And we looked at the daughter of a synagogue leader who was raised from the dead and back to life. So we looked at the mighty power of Jesus and how that is unlocked in faith and in prayer by us to release his power and his love for us. And just before what we're about to read, we're not going to read the whole of Mark 6 today because there's a particular passage the Lord brought to my attention. But just before the passage we read, Jesus has fed 5,000 men and probably some women and children beyond that, so I don't know how many people it was altogether, has produced the miracle of the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and to the astonishment of the disciples, has fed a crowd out of his compassion and love and his understanding and desire to meet our practical needs as well as our spiritual ones. So he demonstrates his ability to provide for us abundantly. So, you're a disciple. You've just been with Jesus through calming the storm, 3 miraculous healings, including deliverance from a legion of demons, feeding 5,000 people. You must be pretty high at this point with Jesus. But then what happens is what we're about to read today. So if you'd like to come and join me. If you want to follow it, it's Mark chapter 6, starting at verse 35. 45, thank
you. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up onto a mountainside to pray. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on the land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars, because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out, because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret, is that right? Gennesaret, that's the one, and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout the whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages, towns, or countrysides, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed.
Right, today we're going to spend a bit of time in the boat. Those of you who were here last year will remember that the sea and the waters symbolized for the Jews danger and uncertainty. So the fact that this takes place on water is part of, plays a little bit into what the disciples, or what the Jewish nation understood the fear and anxiety and risk of being at sea. So we're having a little look in Mark 6 today. Sorry, I'm going to go back a couple. There we go. Right. So what we understand when we read this passage, where it says their hearts were hardened, I think we can interpret that as the disciples still hadn't got it about who Jesus really was. They had understood that he was radical and different. They had understood he was anointed by God and had extraordinary miracle-working power. They had responded in their spirit to his call to follow them, and they had agreed, decided, committed to be his disciples. But they still hadn't completely got their heads around who Jesus was. Anybody here who hasn't yet completely got their head around who Jesus is? Because I think there's something we need to recognize here, that we are, like those disciples, on a journey. Some of us early on a journey, some of us further on a journey. But we are still discovering who Jesus really is, to a large degree. I want you this morning, you can close your eyes if you want to, but try and stay awake. That would be lovely. I want you to imagine the experience of those disciples that we've just read about. I want you to imagine what it would have been like to be in their place in that boat. You're tired from the day. You've had another amazing day with Jesus, but you're tired. You've been full on. You've been serving, collecting bread. You've been on this emotional roller coaster of how are we going to feed them? And then this extraordinary miracle happens from Jesus. You're probably talking with each other about what just happened. You're probably wondering what it means. Probably wondering, who is this? What does it signify that this has just happened? And Jesus says, you guys go on ahead. I'll dismiss the crowd, and I'll see you in a bit. It's possible, I read one of the commentaries, that Jesus may have consistently had these great gatherings and dismissed the crowd just to dampen down the fervour and clamour for his kingdom, so that it doesn't become a political movement and their misunderstanding that he might be coming to overthrow the Romans, it doesn't actually take hold and it doesn't become a political movement. Maybe that's why he kept on closing meetings, separate them, saying, let's move on. Why he constantly told people not to go and testify to what he'd just done, and so keeping things in their time, in their right time. So there you are in the boat, sent by Jesus, chatting about what's happened, kind of tired for the day, wondering what's going to happen next, excited. And then the wind comes up. And when the wind comes up over water, the waves come up. And suddenly, out of nowhere, you're rowing in a storm. You're rowing in rough water, and you're rowing hard and making little or no progress. Suddenly, out of this amazing, powerful ministry, you're on your own, no Jesus, in a boat, in the dark, rowing hard and making no progress. That's where you are. It's dark. It's pitch dark. It's the middle of the night. Things are worse in the middle of the night. Fears are amplified in the middle of the night. Sometimes we just want the dawn to come. And the disciples are driving themselves hard in obedience. Jesus said, row over there, I'll meet you over there. They're rowing, but they're going nowhere because of the headwinds and because of the waves that are against them. I think what the Lord is saying, I'm going to jump a little bit forward there and then come back again. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel as though you're serving the Lord. You've experienced power and excitement in his presence. You've seen great things happen. But for some reason, it's dark. You're slogging yourself out. You're making no progress, and you're wondering where Jesus has gone. And if that resonates with you, this is the Lord saying to you, I'm going to minister to you this morning. If that's you. They're alone, or so they think. It says in the passage that Jesus is up on the mountain praying and watching them, so he can see them. They don't know Jesus can see them, but Jesus is watching them. And suddenly from the mountaintop experience of Jesus' ministry, they are right in the valley, powerless, exposed, and alone in the dark. Anyone ever been there? Anyone there now? If you're there now, this is particularly for you. But it's also for the church, because I think the Lord is saying to us, I see your hearts, I see what you're doing, I love your worship, I love being with you. He is thrilled at the renewed commitment here to proclaim his gospel and take his miracle-working power and healing out to people that he loves. But guess what? That's the perfect time for the enemy to have a pop at us and to make us feel as though we're in the dark in a boat, slogging hard and making no progress. So watch out for that. And I think the Lord wants to say to us as a church, don't panic. You are not alone. I see you. I'm still with you. So then Jesus, he's been watching over them the whole time while he prays alone. They didn't see him, but he was there the whole time. And he comes out to them and immediately calms the sea. What he says to them is interesting, because at various times during his ministry, he says to the disciples, do you not believe? Why are you so dull, is one of the phrases he says occasionally, which is, don't you get it? He doesn't say that here. He just says, it's okay, I'm here. He just says it's okay. Don't be afraid, I'm here. And then what goes on today, as we heard, read to us, they then greet the dawn together, and they go out of this moment of fear and separation and pulling hard for nothing, for no discernible progress. They go straight back into the miraculous ministry of the Lord without missing a beat. They go straight back into large crowds bringing the sick. They go straight back into mass healings from just touching the edge of his cloak. Wherever he went, into villages, towns, or countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. So what the Lord is saying to us this morning is this: take courage. Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. We will experience, and some of us are now experiencing, seasons of headwinds. I know one or two people who've been experiencing headwinds for many months and are still rowing hard. Haven't given up. But he's saying this to us as a church. He says, come on, there are going to be headwinds. There are going to be moments where it just feels like a lot of work. But come on, I'm with you. I have not left you. I see you. I'm with you. Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid. Jesus never stops watching over us, and the dawn will come. The dawn will come. The dawn will come, so keep the faith. Call Jesus into the boat and keep going forward. The kingdom of Christ is assured, and we can expect, this is what hope is, it's expectation, it's not woolly optimism, we can expect to see salvations, we can expect to see healings, we can expect to see deliverance, we can expect to see people being set free, for the Lord has promised that he will do that. All he needs us to be is faithful and obedient to pray and to step out and keep going. Just as the Lord had amazing plans for his apostles and disciples, he has a plan for you. Hear that. The same Jesus, with these same disciples, went out and built a church and changed the world. They went out and ministered in his power. They went out, proclaimed his name, and saw thousands saved. They built the church. These same guys who were in the boat going, oh. Some of them might have kind of given up. They were probably nudging each other, saying, you need to row a bit harder. One of them was saying, I don't think much, I don't know what's going on. What's going on? They're people. They're a church. They're a little church in a boat. A little church in a lonely, dark, quiet boat. And they were missing their Lord. But he had a plan for them. And his plan for them was amazing. His plan for them was astonishing. And it might just be that his plan for you and his plan for me is beyond all we can ask or imagine. Ephesians 3, verse 20. The Lord is able to do beyond all we can ask and all we can imagine. And that's really what I've got to say this morning. Because I think the Lord's word to us is take heart. Take heart. If you're in the dark, if you're slogging hard, and it's hard to see the progress you're making, take heart, for the Lord is still with you, and the Lord will accomplish his purposes. Take heart, little church. Fear not, O little flock. Take heart. I'm not going to use names on the tape, but take heart. Take heart. Take heart. Take heart. Take heart, for the Lord will accomplish his purposes. We don't have our faith in our ability to row through choppy waters, do we? We have faith in the ability of the Lord to overcome in any situation we find ourselves at any time to accomplish his purpose, and all we need to do is call on him and fall in line with his will. That's all we've got to do. But today, I believe that the Lord wants to minister. It's all very well to say take heart, but I think the Lord wants to minister to a bunch of people today. So if you've been suffering from that feeling of, this is a slog. Where are you, Lord? This is a slog. I'm going to invite you to stand where you are. We're going to play some music and invite the Lord, through his Holy Spirit, to minister to you this morning. Then after that, we might do some more prayer together for any needs you have, anybody who would like to be prayed for. But the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to play a bit of music. Only goes for about 5 minutes. I told you I wasn't going to talk for very long, didn't I? For once it was true. All I do is find my phone. Why don't you, if you feel that you would like the Lord to minister to you, if any of that has resonated with you this morning as to where you are, why don't you stand where you are, and I'll play some music as soon as I find my phone.